If you've ever played a sport, you know the deal. Your feet, your ankles, your legs, they're your engine, right? But you also know they can be your biggest weakness. So today, we are cracking open the athlete's playbook of pain to break down the most common lower body injuries that can sideline, well, pretty much anyone. Let's get right into it.
Today, we are exploring the agony of defeat.
You have been waiting all week to say that pun, haven't you?
All week, and I have zero regrets. But for real, our mission today is pretty specific.
Okay.
We want to decode the language of pain. We want to give you the cheat codes to figure out, is this a walk-it-off thing, or is it a call an ambulance because my leg is about to explode thing?
It's honestly a survival skill. Your lower body, it's this incredible system of shock absorbers. But the margin for error, it is razor thin. And when it fails, it usually tells you exactly what went wrong, if you know how to listen.
It's kind of the brutal truth about sports, isn't it? Your whole season, maybe even your career, can just pivot on one single split-second move. One wrong plant of the foot, one awkward landing, and boom. For that athlete, the game is over. I mean, just look at Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers. It was only the fourth slap of his big debut with his new team, a totally routine play, and then his Achilles tendon tore. Just like that, his season was over. It's the perfect and most painful example of how fragile that line is between peak performance and a really serious injury.
Earlier this evening, Aaron Rodgers suffered an injury against the Buffalo Bills, and in this video, we're going to dive into what I think might have happened to the Jets' star quarterback. Let's dive right into this, and at the time of recording, there's about 13 minutes left in the second quarter. We've heard that Rodgers is officially questionable to return, and they're calling it an ankle injury. So what do I see on this play? What would I be thinking about? Well, number one, I think we're dealing with the left leg. I don't really see anything abnormal with the right, and so until we hear otherwise, I think we got to focus on this left calf. As he plants here, I want you to see how in this frame, everything is pretty taut in the back of his calf. We can see these little contours. That's going to be his calf musculature. His foot is anchored and planted on the ground. And then as I advance a couple of frames, we see everything just kind of release. And it's right there in that release where I'm worried he might have suffered a significant calf injury, potentially even an Achilles injury, because the foot is still planted. There should still be load and tension through these muscles, but we see everything just kind of give and release as he goes down to the ground. Now, just because we see this snap doesn't mean that it has to be an Achilles rupture. You have a third often forgotten muscle of the Achilles complex called the plantaris, and the plantaris can rupture, it can pop, it can feel like an Achilles injury. That might even be the little bit of contour that we're seeing right there in the middle of the back of the calf. And if that ruptures, it's not a big deal. It's not really a functional muscle. It certainly is not going to put anybody out for an extended period of time. So my hope is maybe that's all we're seeing here. But this position, his ankle is dorsiflexed, meaning the foot is pointed upwards. The calf is going to be loaded. He gets driven down, and there's a stretch in the back of the calf that certainly could put somebody at risk of something like an Achilles injury. And we've all, of course, seen that dreaded snap, that kind of pop where everything almost recoils higher up in the leg. If his foot had come off the ground before this, I would say, well, the muscle tension was just released. That would be expected. But the heel is still planted when we almost see that release of the energy. Another important view to look at here, just because initially I was wondering about a foot, because all I saw was this first view. If we look at how his left foot is planted into the ground, he then kind of comes and on this step right here, now this is after we've seen that kind of pop in the back of the calf, look how awkwardly his foot gets twisted. This kind of loading position of the foot almost looks to me like potential Liz Frank when we see that load through a plantar flexed load going through the midfoot. But the pop had happened before this in the back of the calf. So I think if this ends up coming out, and sometimes ankle versus foot, we kind of lose sight of all this. I would wonder about the Liz Frank in his foot just from this awkward sort of twist that he has on his ankle. But again, this initial kind of pop that we see in the back, I'll walk through it again. Foot goes down, ankle gets forced up into dorsiflexion. That stretches everything on the back side of the leg. We see initial tension right there. And then as we go a couple frames later, the foot is still loaded, the heel is still on the ground, but we see everything sort of release, suggesting to me that there's a high chance that there's been some type of injury to the back of the leg here, whether it was just a high-grade calf strain or something more significant like an Achilles. Don't forget about that plantaris muscle though, because that can be involved and can isolate and can pop and snap and not at all be a significant thing. So that would be my concern just based on these initial plays and what we've heard so far from Rodgers.
Okay, let's start from the ground up, the foot. It takes a massive amount of punishment, and when it fails, man, everything else can just come crumbling down. First up, we're diving into the agony of defeat. Oh yeah, I went there.
Golden State Steph Curry is the most prolific shooter in NBA history.
Curry puts it in!
But how does he do it? One key, believe it or not, lies with his feet.
Steph Curry from downtown!
A major aspect of Steph's game that often gets overlooked is his incredible movement away from the ball. On average, Curry runs 2.5 miles per game. Now that's double the average distance covered by an NFL wide receiver. Not impressed? Well, the best example might be this play from Game 4 of the 2019 Western Conference Finals.
That's ridiculous.
In just 24 seconds, Steph averages 6.6 miles per hour and changes directions 12 times. Incredibly, he manages to cover 226 feet of ground in this half-court possession, and yet still nails the three with less than 2 seconds left on the shot clock.
Nails another three.
One explanation for Steph's endurance on lengthy possessions like this is his ability to control his heart rate. When your pulse elevates to 115 beats per minute, you begin to lose fine motor skills, particularly hand-eye coordination. But Steph's intense conditioning training allows him to reduce his heart rate to under 80 beats per minute in just the span of a single 90-second timeout. Managing his heart rate during periods of rest means Steph can go all out when moving without the ball and still shoot with incredible efficiency. This is why, over the course of his career, Steph's been able to average 5 miles per hour when moving without the ball, ranking higher than other guards like Kemba Walker and Russell Westbrook. And after all that movement to get open, he's still able to make quick, intricate adjustments to his shooting form. Here, to avoid Damian Lillard on this play, Steph tweaks his shot by jumping forward. This pushes his landing spot by an additional foot compared to where he typically lands. To compensate for this extra forward momentum, he adjusts by launching the ball at a higher than normal 60-degree release angle. The result is a sky-high arc and a clutch basket. Add all this up, and it's no secret why it's the opponents who get exhausted watching Steph drain three after three after three.
We'll cover 2 heel injuries, a calcaneus fracture, often from falls, and Seaver's disease, common in active youth due to overuse and Achilles tendon pull. Hump bump, because it was often seen on people who wore those rigid, high-heeled shoes. For athletes, though, this bony little outgrowth on the back of the heel is caused by something else. And trust me, it is anything but cute.
So this bump is often a complication of retrocalcaneal bursitis. Now that's just a fancy term for when the little fluid-filled sac, the bursa, that sits between your Achilles tendon and your heel bone gets all inflamed. It's caused by the constant pressure and rubbing from your shoe. And your body's response? Well, its defense mechanism is to literally build more bone in that spot, which, you guessed it, only makes the whole problem worse.
All right, moving from the heel to the middle of the foot, we have the Lisfranc injury. And just looking at this x-ray, you can see how gnarly this is. It's not super common, but it can be a career ender. It's where bones in your midfoot are broken or the ligaments are torn, and it leads to a complete structural collapse of your arch. It looks just brutal, doesn't it? So how in the world does a foot get mangled like that? You might be surprised to hear it's often not from some huge dramatic hit. This injury usually happens from a really sudden, sharp twist on a foot that's already planted and pointing down. Think about a football lineman getting his foot trapped and then rolled up on in a pile. The result is immediate and severe. We're talking intense pain, massive swelling, and absolutely no chance of putting any weight on it.
But burning or electric shocks, that's the nerves talking.
That's the signal, yeah. Same goes for tarsal tunnel syndrome.
Yeah.
It's basically carpal tunnel, but in your ankle. A compressed nerve, pins and needles. The March fracture, that usually hits the second metatarsal.
The long bone of the second toe.
Exactly. And it's called that because of military history.
Mm-hmm.
You know, soldiers marching.
I was going to say, it has to be.
Yep. You go from sitting around to marching 20 miles with a heavy pack.
Mm-hmm.
That bone just can't handle the sudden spike in load, and it cracks.
So that's the New Year's resolution runner injury.
That's a great way to put it. Too hard, too fast.
Plantar fasciitis is generalized pain in the arch and heel.
But the Jones fracture, the notes here are flagging this one as a final boss of an injury. Why is breaking your little pinky toe bone such a huge deal?
Well, it's not just that it's a break, it's a logistics problem.
The
Jones fracture happens right at the base of that fifth metatarsal. And that specific spot in the foot has what's called a watershed blood supply,
Meaning?
meaning it's a desert. It gets barely any blood flow.
Oh.
And blood is the construction crew that comes in to fix the break. Without it, you get non-union. The bone just refuses to knit itself back together.
That sounds incredibly frustrating.
It is. That's why you see NBA players getting screws put in there immediately. If you just put it in a cast and wait, you might be waiting forever.
Wow. And I can't help but notice, looking at the section here on bunions, we are doing a lot of this to ourselves, aren't we?
We are. Hallux valgus bunions are largely exacerbated by narrow, pointy shoes. We literally squeeze a functional human foot into a fashionable shape and then wonder why our mechanics fail.
We're basically binding our own feet for the immogram.
It's a choice. And, maybe next time choose the shoes that actually fit the shape of your foot.
It's very unusual to see a big toe go over top of all the other toes. You usually see it kind of like her right foot, where the big toe goes under. It's just kind of the bigger guy, and it goes under everything. It's like completely out of its joint.
I'll tell you the truth. I've never seen this toe go all the way over before. Yours is a severe bunion deformity, and that's called hallux abducto valgus. What? Yes,
What
I know.
is that?
You're right. So hallux abducto valgus is our bunion, right?
Some people think of their bunion deformity as like a growth on the inside of their foot, because honestly, sometimes it looks like there's a golf ball there. But in reality, it's just a joint that is, out of direction.
And then your
Yeah.
second toe, it's hammering.
The second toe here?
Yeah, this guy here.
Okay, yeah,
right?
that, yeah.
And it's also very swollen right now. So
Correct.
all of the jamming of the joints throughout, your ballerina career and just regular life, it's really taking its toll on every single joint of the foot. Another thing is your second toe. And, this is all cut up, due to shoes and rubbing and things like that.
Yeah.
But this toe is also very long. The good thing is you have something that can be fixed, but we have a lot of work ahead of us,
Yeah.
a lot of work.
Danielle has so many things that are going on in both feet to where we're only going to address one foot at a time, because she needs that other foot to stabilize her during her recovery.
The main part of it is the big guy here.
Yes.
And this big guy has a mind of its own, and it's touching your other toes. So what we'll need actually to do is take a chunk of your bone out, right?
Okay.
That's going to be able to get this bone realigned. That's going to shift your foot into a more corrected position. The bump's going to be gone, and we're going to hold this toe in place with a plate and screws. This toe is going to need to get shortened a little bit, so you're not putting all that pressure and it's not hitting and jamming into your shoes. And then you'll have a nice straight foot.
That's incredible.
How's that look right there?
I don't think I've ever walked with a straight foot.
If you're out of pain, you'll be able to dance, you'll be able to get that passion back.
Oh my God.
So that's like my
That's
main goal
cool.
for you.
You're gonna wave a magic wand and it's gonna be great. And
Yeah.
doctors, maybe, yeah, that would be great.
I wish. There's a lot more work than that.
Yeah.
This wand is going to be a bone saw. So
Well,
it's a little more graphic than a beautiful wand.
It's going to be challenging to get that relocated, because whenever you have a dancer's foot, your plan can change. I mean, you can go in with plan A and you can come out with plan D. And Danielle has some of the worst dancer's feet I've ever seen.
Morton's neuroma. That's a classic nerve issue. The nerve that runs between your third and fourth toes, it gets irritated and it starts to thicken.
So what does that feel like?
Feels like you're walking on a marble.
Yeah.
Or you get these burning electric zaps into your toes.
That's a really key distinction, though, for anyone listening. If you're trying to decode the language, aching or throbbing is probably bone or tissue.
Right. We have to talk about turf toe.
Yeah, turf toe sounds like something you get from gardening. But I've seen 300-pound linemen literally weeping on the sideline over this. Why is a toe injury taking out giants?
Because it's a mechanical failure of your main point of leverage.
Okay.
Turf toe is a hyperextension of the big toe joint. Imagine forcing a door hinge to bend the wrong way.
Ouch. Okay, yeah, I'm visualizing that. Not good.
So when you push off to sprint, that big toe takes on this massive force, sometimes multiple times your body weight. If it gets bent back too far, boom.
You tear something.
You sprain or tear the capsule underneath it.
Yeah.
You lose your ability to push off. Your explosiveness is neutralized. Yeah. Instantly. No cap.
Did you say no cap in a medical context?
I'm trying to stay current, keep up with the youth.
Please don't. It's weird. But okay, so turf toe is a joint getting wrecked.
Okay, let's talk about something a little more relatable because I'm sure many of us have been here, the subungual hematoma. You know it as the dreaded black toenail. I actually lost one after a soccer game where a guy about twice my size just stomped right on my foot. That toenail, it did not make it. R.I.P. This happens from one of two things. Either a direct blow, like my little soccer incident, or from repetitive tiny traumas, like a runner's toe constantly jamming into the front of their shoe. Blood pools under the nail, and that creates this immense pressure and pain. And yeah, in most cases, you're going to be saying goodbye to that toenail for at least a few months. Okay, let's move on up the chain to the ankle, a joint that is truly a masterpiece of mobility, but it is also a prime target for injury. If you've ever sprained your ankle, you know that wobbly, untrustworthy feeling that can stick around for weeks. That's the feeling of instability. So not all ankle rolls are created equal. You can roll it inwards, which is called an inversion sprain, or you can roll it outwards, and that's an eversion sprain. The direction you roll it determines which ligaments get all jacked up. Inversion sprains, that's where you damage the ligaments on the outside of your ankle. They are by far the most common type. Eversion sprains, on the other hand, damage the super strong deltoid ligament on the inside, and they happen way less often. But when they do, they can be more severe and can even cause an avulsion fracture. That's where the ligament literally pulls a piece of bone off with it. Ouch.
But then there's this high ankle sprain. This is the one that just lingers. The notes say athletes hate this more than a break. Why is high so much worse than low?
Because it's a completely different anatomical problem. A low sprain is the ligaments around the ankle joint.
Okay.
A high sprain, or a syndesmosis injury, involves the really heavy-duty ligaments that hold your two shin bones, the tibia and the fibula together.
Okay, so if you think of the two leg bones like the two prongs of a wishbone.
That is a perfect analogy,
Yeah.
and the high ankle ligaments are like the strong bit of tape holding those prongs together.
Nicey.
And here's why it never seems to heal. Every single time you take a step, your body weight drives a wedge right between those two bones, trying to spread them apart.
Oh, I get it. So you can't just rest it because every single step you take is basically prying the injury back open.
Exactly. That's why it has such main character syndrome. It refuses to leave the stage.
Main character syndrome. Okay, I'll give you that one. That works.
It takes twice as long to heal as a normal sprain, sometimes longer.
Yeah, we have to touch on the grossest thing in the entire slide deck.
Oh boy.
The ankle dislocation.
The true emergency. This is high-energy trauma. We're talking a car crash, a really bad football tackle.
Right.
The talus bone is knocked completely out of the mortise. That's the little bracket formed by your leg bones.
The visual description in the notes is foot facing the wrong way.
That gives me the ick. But yeah, it creates this immediate tenting of the skin. The blood supply gets kinked off like a garden hose.
So you have to.
You have to reduce it. You have to snap it back in immediately on the field in the ER, or the foot dies.
The foot dies. Okay.
Yeah.
On that happy note, let's move on.
All right, time for a quick interactive break, and I want you to actually do this with me. Go ahead, stand up. Now, balance on one foot. Feeling steady? Okay, now close your eyes. Whoa, suddenly way harder, right? That feeling of your ankle firing like crazy to keep you balanced, that's your body's proprioception at work. It's like your internal GPS, and it's absolutely critical for ankle stability. Okay, you can sit back down now. So, we've covered the foot and the ankle. Now we're moving up into the lower leg, and this is where injuries can become true nightmares. We're talking long recoveries and sometimes permanent consequences. First is an injury that nearly every runner, basketball player, or dancer has felt, medial tibial stress syndrome, but we all know it as shin splints. It's that nagging, aching pain right along the inside of your shin bone, and it's caused by inflammation from repetitive stress. It is the classic overuse injury that's just screaming, you did too much, too soon.
Let's talk about shin splints. So first off, you can see we've cut a little window into the tibia here, and that allows you to see the medullary cavity, which is the hollow center of a long bone. But if we draw our attention over here, you can see this tissue called the periosteum. And periosteum is going to reside on the outside of compact bone. But periosteum is going to be loaded with nerve endings, bone cells, and a whole variety of other things. But you can see that it's continuous with this tissue here called the fascia. See, as I put my probe under here, you can see that they blend with one another. In fact, they're made of the exact same type of tissue. The only reason we call them something different is because they're in different locations. That's just how anatomy works. Well, in shin splints, you can get an overworked muscle which can actually start to tug on the fascia, which can then tug on the periosteum and cause an inflammation. And since it's loaded with nerve endings, that means you're going to get quite a bit of pain.
Kevin Ware just took a shot. Oh my.
Tibial contusion, which is just a fancy way of saying I got kicked in the shin.
Yep.
Why does that hurt so much more than getting kicked in the thigh?
It's a lack of padding. It's that simple.
Yeah.
On your thigh, you have layers of muscle, fat. Exactly. On your shin, it is just skin, a very thin wrapper around the bone called the periosteum, and then bone.
And that wrapper.
That periosteum is loaded with nerve endings. So you're basically striking the nerve directly against the anvil of the bone.
Rude.
But let me tell you, shin splints are nothing compared to this next one. Acute compartment syndrome is a terrifying medical emergency. It usually happens after a direct trauma, like a really hard impact. The blow causes so much bleeding and swelling inside a muscle compartment that the pressure just builds and builds until it chokes off the blood vessels and nerves. If you don't get immediate surgery to relieve that pressure, it can lead to permanent muscle death and nerve damage. And then there's the sound. The one sound no athlete ever wants to hear. That sudden, sickening pop from the back of your lower leg. The culprit here is the Achilles tendon. This is the largest and strongest tendon in your entire body. It connects your powerful calf muscles to your heel bone. It's the cable that lets you walk, run, and jump. It's responsible for literally every single time you push off the ground. When it ruptures, the signs are unmistakable. You often feel or even hear that pop, and it's followed by instant, severe pain in the back of your ankle. Swelling starts almost immediately, and you physically cannot point your foot down or push off the ground. The connection has been completely cut. Athletes who suffer this injury, from pros like Aaron Rodgers all the way down to everyday people, they almost all describe the exact same bizarre sensation. It feels exactly like someone walked up behind you and kicked you or even shot you in the back of the leg. But when you turn around to see who did it, there's no one there. It's just a brutal, shocking moment of realization.
Nice.
But listen, an injury, even a devastating one, is not the end of the story. For any athlete, from the weekend warrior to the seasoned pro, the comeback is everything. And while injuries are always a risk in sports, they don't have to define you. The real takeaway here is this: understanding why these injuries happen is your greatest weapon. It's about listening to your body when it whispers in pain, so you don't have to hear it scream. It's being proactive about strength, and especially about that stability and proprioception we talked about. That is how you build a foundation for a long, healthy, athletic life. Ultimately, a physical injury is a test of the body, for sure, but the long, grinding road of recovery, that is a true test of the mind. So I'm going to leave you with this question. What's the greatest comeback story, in sports or just in life, that inspires you? Let us know. Thanks for hanging out.